Awesome. Today we're met with Ray Murphy, your CEO of Warriors Healing Network. And I was wondering if you could just awesome. Today we're met with Ray Murphy, your CEO of Warriors Healing Network. And I was wondering if you could just introduce yourself and just briefly describe your organization.
Sure. Again, my name is Ray Murphy. I live in Charleston, South Carolina. I started the Warriors Healing Network to help get combat veterans and police officers diagnosed with PTSD access to psychedelic-assisted therapies and get the prep work prior and get integration work when they return. I suffered from complex PTSD myself, and it took me discovering, I guess, psychedelics to find out that they are actually a viable option to this type of condition and is extremely effective. And that's what I'm trying to bring to light so that people aren't trying to reinvent the wheel and go down the path that I had to go back down to discover it.
Right. I remember when there was a lot of videos, documentaries, and stuff on Netflix coming out talking about the positive impact of psychedelics. And I just thought it was a lot of woo woo, until I actually had an experience myself. And I was like, wow, there is, at least for me, there was a positive benefit for it. I'm a bit curious about your experience and what led you and inspired you to do the Warrior Healing Network. What was it about psychedelics that you found impactful?
I suffered from complex PTSD for quite a while. I mean, I suffered a lot of death in my life. And when I lost a dog named Nero about 2018, I really came apart. And at the time, I didn't even know what it was. I wasn't officially diagnosed with anything. But I knew I didn't feel right. And, I started going down the path of trying everything under the sun to deal with the trauma and depression and stuff like that, like talk therapies and EMDR and things like that. And nothing really did anything. In fact, some of the treatments themselves just made me more agitated, more upset that, I'm doing what I'm told to do and nothing's really helping. And after about 5 years of that, I elected to just try psychedelics because I kept hearing it pop up on various podcasts like Joe Rogan and just in media in general. And when I tried, I think the first thing I tried was ketamine. And I realized I got a little bit of relief, but not enough to, make a profound difference, but enough to lead me on a path that, okay, something's happening here. And then about a year or so later, I tried a kind of a longer journey, conducted at a doctor's office in DC that administered psilocybin, MDMA, and ketamine kind of various points throughout a day. And, that blasted me off to the moon. And
I imagine.
I didn't quite know what I just experienced, but I knew I felt a lot better. And right about that same time, I also discovered integration work. I didn't really know what that was. And essentially, for those that don't know, integration work is kind of putting the pieces together from a psychedelic experience in a positive manner. And there's specific integration coaches out there. There's not many of them. And this is something, hopefully we'll be able to change. But the ones that are out there are essentially counselors that have experience with psychedelics. And that combination of doing the journey and starting the integration work afterwards was game changing. Right there, I knew I was onto something. I did also realize there's kind of levels to this game. There's a whole lot of psychedelics out there, from mushrooms to, ketamine and things like that. And really the ones that kept popping up that you keep hearing about are ibogaine and ayahuasca being the kind of the big boys on the block. They're not known for being pleasurable experiences, and they are not. So they're definitely not for the faint of heart. However, they're extremely effective. So after I kind of identified that, I'm kind of on the right path here with the psychedelic assisted therapy, I finally convinced myself to go try it myself. And I think it was in 2020, I went down to Costa Rica to a place called Rythmia Life Advancement Center. And I did a week-long retreat, which included 4 ayahuasca ceremonies. And it blew my socks off. It was a totally different level of recovery. I felt like a different person. I felt like somebody took a weight off my back. I came back I was a completely different person. And I knew I had to do something with this knowledge, which was to seek out other people like me who has basically done everything they were told to do and have gotten nowhere with the PTSD treatments, um, and show them that this is a viable option and this is legit if you're willing to put in the work. And that's what led me to start the Warriors Healing Network. And so far, we've only been around less than a year. We've been able to send 2 combat veterans down to Costa Rica also, and it's been game changing for them. And we've got 2 other people in the pipeline right now, and we're just trying to, keep on chugging. So,
right. You spoke on integration work, and I was wondering if you could elaborate just a little bit more on what was it about the integration work that you found beneficial, or what was integration work? Like, what were they doing?
Sure. So when you do psychedelics, you have this thing called neuroplasticity that occurs in your brain. If you equate this to like a snow globe, if you think of yourself with PTSD mode, your brain is stuck in this negative thought pattern loop, like over and over and over. When you shake that thing up like a snow globe, those thought patterns have to come to rest at some point. And really, that's your opportunity to make positive change in your life. And this is why the psychedelics themselves are just one piece of the pie. The integration coach will help you kind of reframe your thoughts, make you think about things in a different way that you maybe hadn't thought of before. And then that, in conjunction with just some lifestyle changes, can really be that, that trifecta of stuff that makes your life better. I mean, you have to be able to put in that work and that change, and that means being uncomfortable and vulnerable. Prior to all this stuff, I would have never shared, all these traumatic things with strangers or any stuff like that. But after that, I was fully willing to share and then also face it. I didn't want this PTSD diagnosis to become my identity. I wanted to be, something I learned to manage and overcome. I didn't want this to be a defining point of who I am. Trauma is just that. It's something that happens to you. It's not who you are.
Right.
So that's where it all changed for me.
Okay. You said you felt better. In what ways did you see relief?
I didn't have that inclination to be on edge constantly.
Yeah.
I started seeking the positives in life versus dwelling on the negatives. And that's just, a constant thing. The hypervigilism, you can't be in that state 24/7. And everybody, veterans, especially combat veterans and police that have seen all sorts of horrific shit on a daily basis, get used to that. And they start to think that's the only way the world is. And instead of seeking out the positive and the beautiful things in life, and that's really what mattered. I also changed my focus to be a little more in the moment. And that was something that was really hard for me to do. I always was worrying and preparing for the next, horrible thing to come down the pipe, and not focusing on what's immediately in front of me and things that I actually could control.
Nice. And yeah. I had a very similar experience too. Were there any like positive mental health practices or anything that you implemented after your ayahuasca treat? Maybe something that was suggested by the integration work or a coach or anything like that, like meditation, yoga?
Man, all of it. I tell you what, I mean, especially it started at Rythmia when I went down there. They've got a pretty slick system. It was a little healing bubble. They got breathwork classes, do yoga, they got clean eating, and they got classes that kind of prep you for the ceremonies in the evening. And then, you do the ceremonies, and then there's opportunities to share your experiences and things like that. So it's a whole lot of just kind of learning how to live in a better manner. And then when you come home, obviously the challenge is to keep that up. And that's where kind of an integration coach will kind of keep you honest and keep you on that recovery.
Was this feeling better? Was it a short-term thing, or was it more of a long-term? Because I don't know, I only have mushrooms and never done ayahuasca, but I realized like after 3 months, I kind of came back to a new norm. What was your experience, and how long did the positive feelings really last?
Yeah, I mean, well, all of the psychedelics, they have somewhat of an afterglow period. For the ibogaine and ayahuascas of the world, they tend to be a little bit longer, especially my first experience. I've been there twice. After my first one, I would say that it lasted for a good 5-6 months. I was also doing integration work in that time, but really what you don't want is to just think that, you've drank some ayahuasca and you feel great. You don't really need to do anything after that. I mean, that is probably the biggest mistake with any type of psychedelic therapy, is the work's just beginning. You've opened this opportunity to change your life, and you really got to start putting in the work there. And that's where it can get really uncomfortable, because you're making life changes. You're doing things that you wouldn't normally do. And you really have to hold yourself accountable, because you're going to have bad days. The goal is not to have bad days, just to change the way you look at them and how you deal with them.
Right.
And I think that's the important part to understand when you're dealing with psychedelics. It's not just taking, some psychedelics and floating around the room for a while. It's going to be a lot more involved with that.
Right. I feel like my experience really gave me an opportunity to lean into some of that historic trauma with a little bit of, I guess, disconnect from the deep negative emotional aspects of it. So it was the first time I was able to really look at it and just accept it for what it was. But
but understand, I mean, all that stuff can change. And I think I tell a lot of people this too. I mean, you've got to be willing to get uncomfortable. And this is why, so few people actually go to that next level, to go up to, try an ibogaine or ayahuasca experience, because they're not pleasurable at all. It tastes like crap. You feel like crap, and it's highly emotional. I mean, you're breaking down and crying. I think I cried more in a week than I did in 30 years, in front of a room of strangers. But that experience, just being around all these other people on their healing journeys, is extremely powerful, not to mention the spiritual aspect of what's going on when you've got, this practice of medicine, plant medicine, that's been, practiced for hundreds of years in the Amazon region and in these jungles, and these shamans up there have dedicated their lives to this craft. And you can feel that energy in the room when you're there for ceremony, when they're blessing this medicine, and they're doing these chants called ikaros, which are essentially these sounds of the jungle, which are meant to draw out the effects of the DMT. It'll make the hair on your arms stand up. It is, powerful to say the least, but it's palpable. Feel it in the room, that energy, and that healing energy is real. I mean, you go down there and then you talk to all these other people, and they're all having different experiences, but all similar too. They're all just in their own lane. You know what I mean? They're dealing with stuff on their own terms, but that medicine basically gives you what you need, not what you want.
Right.
So when you pull up to that thing, you better be ready to go. That's why, anybody thinking about doing these type of things has to go down there with some serious intention to make change, and then understand that they just got to let go. If you can't let go, you're always going to have a difficulty with pretty much any psychedelic, for that matter. But especially with ayahuasca and ibogaine.
Could you walk us through the process if someone is to become sponsored and you sponsor them? What's the start to finish? Like, what's the pre-Costa Rica go like, and what's it like in Costa Rica, and then what happens when they come back?
Sure. Well, I mean, first off, there's a couple different ways people can go through our programs. They need to apply through warriorshealingnetwork.org. We do a vetting process, meaning we need to make sure that, number one, they're the right candidates, because these treatment grants aren't cheap. They can cost up to around 10 grand if we have to pay for everything. We usually ask people to contribute something to the cause, so they have some skin in the game if they're able to. But if they were not able to afford anything, this can cost upwards of $10,000. That being said, what we have to do is make sure that they're fully on board with what we're doing, understand what they're signing up for, and medically they can be cleared. They're not set up to be detox centers. You have to be able to safely come off antidepressant meds and SSRIs and things like that. And, if people are alcoholics, they have to be able to safely get off alcohol and things like that. So they're not having, DTs when they're down at these centers. If they're selected, then what we do is we need to find a retreat date, far enough on the calendar that they can do some prep work. So part of that prep work will be learning how to breathe. When things get uncomfortable, things get funky, things get weird on psychedelics, the answer is always breathe. just coming to your breath and being able to kind of stay, in your own brain when you're going through these experiences is extremely important. You also do something that's called a dieta, which sounds exactly what it is. It's just a diet to kind of clean out your system a little bit, so you're not going down there with things that might interfere with the medicine and the experience that you may have. When they get down there, it's a week-long retreat, like I said, and they've got all sorts of classes and services that you can do throughout that week. And then they have 4 ceremonies, the first Monday through Thursday. Each night is a different shaman. Each night is a different brew. So you're getting kind of different concoctions of ayahuasca. And like I said, they've got kind of opportunities to share your experiences and talk with other people that are there. You got a couple of days to kind of recover from it all on the tail end, and then you come back, and right away we go right into our integration work. Currently, we have an integration coach on our board. Her name's Christina Muncie. She has a website called seekingsantosha.com. She's amazing. Awesome. She's the one I've been working with ever since I tried that experience in DC, and I still work with her to this day. But she's helped me change a lot of the ways I look and think about trauma and or just negative thoughts in general. And I've been able to really turn my life around and give this gift back to others. And that's kind of the important thing. This whole thing is just making sure that everybody goes through this experience, is dedicated to it all and puts in everything they can, because we are as an organization.
Right. On that, what are some short-term and long-term goals for your organization? What do you see it like maybe this year, and what's the big ultimate goal?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're a newer 501, so right out of the gate, cash is king. We need some more operating budget money raised, and then obviously every time we get an application, we do what we can to kind of get people down there. So we just came off a fundraising weekend. We just had Eddie and Andrea Gallagher from the Pipe Hitter Foundation came up and supported us. So we've got ourselves, a couple promo reels and things like that, so we can start courting kind of larger donors in this arena. And we have 2 people that are already in the pipeline right now, and we're trying to get them sent down there. We're just, again, trying to raise more money for that. But ideally, we would just like to continue to grow in whatever capacity we can. If I end up sending one person a year, that's one person I've helped.
Right.
I wish I can get in front of more, but that'll be determined by obviously budgets and stuff like that. So that's where we are for now. We'll kind of see what the future holds. Right now, I'm just focused on what's immediately in front of us.
Right. What are some other things that help you in your life? I believe you're an animal advocate. You have animals. What are some other things that you found that are super positive that help raise the quality of your life?
Yeah, I mean, well, I will say this first. I mean, if you've got some deep-seated trauma in there, you can't deal with it with a low-level treatment. So when I'm talking about, doing some wellness practices for yourself and go walk in the park and stuff like that, well, that's great. But if you've got some serious issues to work through, you're not going to get the full effect of all that stuff. And it has to be dealt with, and you have to get uncomfortable. So you got to be honest with yourself. If whatever you're doing for your PTSD or your trauma is not working for you, you got to keep looking and pushing. And you really got to take a hard look at the psychedelic option, because as far as I'm concerned, it is the way to go about it. The psychedelic or the pharmaceutical route, which the VA likes to push, is definitely not the way to go. In fact, it makes things worse. Universally, I've heard nothing but negative experiences when people are trying to get on top of a PTSD condition through a VA or standard modalities. That being said, I mean, some of the things that are working for me, post journey are just things like trying to be present, around my animals. I have horses. Horses are big mirrors. They basically will give you that same energy you give to them. So they're kind of, built-in little, therapeutic animals that tell you, hey, you need to chill out, because the horse will get agitated too, and they're 1,200-pound animals, so you need to be wary of that. Taking time for myself just to do some breath work, or understanding if I'm getting upset about something, to really put it in check. Is this really something that's that important? And if I just breathe, do I feel better?
Right.
And then obviously making time for myself to do things like, working out or cold plunge in the morning and things like that, that I can kind of reset myself physically and mentally. And I make that a priority. That's important because, my recovery affects other people.
Right.
I think people forget that piece of it. When you have PTSD, it's not just affecting you. You got the ripple effect of your loved ones around you. They have to deal with you and deal with your shit. If you're putting it out
Right.
there and you're not being a good person, nobody wants to be around that, and it brings them down. It's just not fair. So I think you have to take a step back, especially if you think that this is some kind of a identity for you because of the trauma you went through. Think about what it's doing to your loved ones and people that are around you. And if that should be some kind of motivation, hopefully, to kind of take it to the next level and get some help.
Yeah, that's something I still see. I still see the negative impacts of way I was with my family. They still walk on eggshells. And you mentioned cold plunge. Do you do cold plunge? I've been reading a lot about it lately, and I see how it does a lot of the dopamine. It dumps a lot of dopamine, as well as if you do coffee before, it can really raise your mental health. I was just curious if you've experienced that same thing, or if it's just a physical benefit, which
No,
not feeling sore helps too.
it's everything.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, when I don't cold plunge, I'm upset. Like if it messes up my day, I've made it part of my routine. Maybe the first couple times you dip in there and it takes your breath away, you're like, holy crap.
Yep.
After that, you get used to it and you kind of go into a meditative state anyway, because you're just breathing and, throw on some meditative music. You're talking a 3 to 5 minute investment, and you get out of there and you feel awesome. Like
Yeah.
you're ready for the day. So yeah, mentally and then physically, yeah, I've got a whole bunch of injuries and stuff like that. And it's the best thing I can do to keep it in check.
Yeah. First time I ever tried it, I had a little bit tendonitis in my elbow, and I got in it and it was gone for almost a week. And I was like, all right,
Yeah.
we're going to get one of these ice baths.
Yeah, legit.
Drugs. You were talking about the drugs with the VA system. I had the same experience. I believe you're the one that mentioned it to me. I don't know what it was, but I have TBI also. And once I got on some of the medication they prescribed, it was immediate suicidal ideations. And I had to get off immediately.
Yeah. I mean, I've got 3 people that I know personally that were treated for PTSD with undiagnosed TBIs in there that immediately, went into uncharacteristic suicidal thoughts and almost ate a gun, all 3 of them. And that's not a fluke, right? I mean, there's no way I know 3 people personally.
Right.
And then you keep hearing the 22 a day, which is probably triple that number. The VA is definitely culpable in a lot of this stuff. It's just a system that's overrun. We've been at war for 20 years. They can't possibly deal with all these people, and they can't possibly deal with it well. Here in the U.S., unfortunately, with us labeling helpful substances as Schedule 1 drugs, we are stuck in this loop because pharma can't get their hands on it. And unfortunately, for people who are at the end of the rope who need help now, that entails getting on a plane and going to another country to go deal with it. And that's kind of where we are now. We're getting closer. MAPS, the organization, just completed phase 3 trials on MDMA for PTSD treatment, and I believe they're also studying psilocybin. In fact, one of my board members, Jennifer Jones, she's a psychiatrist here in Charleston, and she's also part of the MAPS program. So I've got really a hell of a lot of knowledge here of people who understand, what this can actually do for you in a professional manner.
Right.
But the problem is, if they legalize all this stuff tomorrow, you're going to have, 100,000 people trying to get into these programs, and who's going to administer this stuff? Who are going to be the integration coaches that can take people fully through this thing? So it's just going to be a long, long process. And for a lot of people, they don't have that time.
Right.
They're at the end of the rope now. They're already thinking suicide is their only option. So unfortunately, I think for quite a long time, we're going to need organizations like my Warriors Healing Network to be around to kind of help veterans that are in need. There's a couple others in this space that I know of. I know there's Vet Solutions, which I believe is more tiered towards like the tier 1 operators out there that have that are in PTSD mode.
Right.
Heroic Hearts is another one. I think they're a little more broad in scale. Ours, I just opened up to combat veterans and police officers because I do a lot of work with police K9 teams around the world. So that's kind of where we're at with I guess the need for this organization.
Absolutely. And when it does become legal, one of the big things that stood out to me, I did an episode with MAPS, a researcher from MAPS, and if you're not mentally prepared to lean into the trauma, you're going to be re-traumatized, and it's going to make it worse. So I can only imagine getting on psychedelics, not being mentally prepared for what you're going to experience and not doing it properly, and then going into that elevated state and being re-traumatized at a level that's terrifying.
Yep. And yeah, set and setting is an extremely important thing. You know, we're talking set, who's administering this stuff, and setting, like what are we talking about? Is this retreat environment, a comfortable, safe environment, or is this clinical? And it makes a difference on the outcome of the experience itself. And these are things that have to be really considered if you want to do this properly. The set and setting is very important. It has to be, and there has to be some kind of integrative component here in prep work prior. Otherwise, like you said, you could really, cause some havoc. And obviously our goal here is not to cause any further harm. We want people to get relief from this,
right?
Especially when they're at their end of the rope, right? I mean, we just don't have any wiggle room anymore. These people need help, or they're going to become a statistic, and that's not cool.
Nope.
These men and women have given everything to this country to make us safe and live in this relative comfort we have here. We should be given that back tenfold, especially with police. They're getting beat up from all sides, with the media, their own commands, community, all misinformation out there. If anything, we should be hyper-funding them and finding ways to keep them healthy on the job. And that's just something I'm very passionate about.
Right. No, I am too. A mental health balance, it never seems to stop. For you, is there anything personal that you're looking to try, maybe implement? I know once I started down this journey, I didn't realize that I could ever be happy again, not wake up without wanting to like commit suicide or just end it all. And now that's like, oh, okay, there's new levels of that's a possibility. I was just curious, like, do you have anything that's next on your to-do list, or maybe reach another level of peacefulness, like mental health?
Man, I'm thankful every day that I'm leading the life that I'm leading now. I see a lot of people are stuck in that mode and just can't get out of it, and they can only be helped if they want to be helped. And that's the sad part about it. For me personally, I've actually found some purpose in my life a little bit more behind, after we started this organization, be able to give this back to people and be passionate about the effects, and knowing, I've somehow become this subject matter expert on psychedelics and trauma, which is something I never thought I'd end up be doing at all. You know what I mean? It's just something to think about. And here I am, boom. But that being said, I really, truly try to live in the moment as much as humanly possible and appreciate what I have. And I'm grateful. Like every night at dinner, we always mention that's something we're grateful for. And I think that's very important too. That just kind of puts your brain in a mindset that, things are positive around you. I can't control all the garbage that's happening in the media and around the world. So I'm going to focus on what I can control, which is my reaction to it, and I guess the positive things that are around me. So that's where I'm at.
That's awesome. If someone's looking for more information, or do you know of any references, or if you were trying to give someone more information about psychedelics or anything along those lines, where would you point them, or what was helpful for you?
So a couple things. Obviously, our website, warriorshealingnetwork.org. We've got a whole lot of media on there that you can kind of check out and understand the programs. The Netflix documentary, what was it called? How to Change Your Mind.
Right.
That was
I like that
informative. One. Yep. They didn't really dive into ayahuasca specifically, but they did psychedelics in general. There's another documentary. It's on YouTube, actually. It's called Awakening the Soul.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe some of that was filmed at Rythmia. So if you want to get kind of a peek into what it looks like, they don't film the actual ceremonies for obvious reasons with people in distress and stuff like that, but you'll get a kind of an idea what's behind the plant medicine and the theories behind it. those are pretty transformative. Another one I like to tell people to check out is there's another documentary called Heal. I believe you can find it on Netflix, or you just dig for it. Heal documentary. It talks about the effects, physiological effects of wellness type programs and what it does for you in your body when you're doing that. And I think this is really important for people like that have been in the military and these type A's that are kind of badasses in their own realm, but they're wondering why, they say, do yoga. Okay, well, I'm doing yoga. What does this do for me? I feel great, but what am I doing this for? Mm-hmm. That does a really good job explaining, I guess, the chemicals and things that are being released in your body that help combat inflammation and chronic disease. And when you kind of understand that piece of it, I think this is where people can kind of connect the dots and understand that, hey, these guys over there with man jammies and beads and flowers in their hair, they've got something to offer as each other. You've got these two communities that are kind of at odds with each other. But if you realize there's stuff that can be learned from both sides of the fence that are positive, then you start to focus a little bit more on what you can do holistically. And I think that one was pretty helpful for me. I had enough people to tell me to do breath work or tell me to do yoga, but I never really asked why. And I think that documentary kind of helped rounded that picture out for me.
Yeah, no, awesome. With that, that's everything that I had on my list to ask you about. I was just going to give you an opportunity if there's anything that I missed or anything you wanted to elaborate on.
I'd love for people to either support our mission. You can donate at warriorshealingnetwork.org, or if you want to sponsor a specific loved one or somebody who's struggling out there, you can do that also. Just contact us through the website. Obviously, they would need to qualify medically and be willing to go through the treatment programs. But if that's something they're down for, we can make that happen. You can also find us at Warriors Healing Network 2022 on Instagram. And really, we're just asking people to, donate whatever they can, or if they've got services that would help our mission, or they have, just the ability to push out our mission to larger masses, that would be great. Just like your podcast does and anything like that. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. And everything that you referenced throughout the show, I'll add in the show notes. There'll be easy accessible links just below whatever platform it is you listen on. And with that, that's everything I have, Ray. I really appreciate it. Love the mission that you guys are doing. I hope one day either I'm sponsoring a friend or myself to go down there because I'd really like to check it out.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. Take care.
You too. Have a good day, sir.